Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
All right, welcome back to Podcast 7 of 2019. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can tweet me at The Public Dog, and you can tweet us at The Odds Breakers. This episode is being brought to you by MyBookie.ag. For a 50% sign-up bonus, please visit MyBookie. Use the promo code TheOddsBreakers for a one-time 50% bonus. If you'd like to help us out with our costs and support the podcast, well, we'd love to help you out. Please become an Oddsbreakers member at $12.99 a month and get access to our premium picks before the line moves. For $2 more, please become a patron subscriber and get all that and the podcast a little bit early. And if nothing else, please visit theoddsbreakers.com and become a free picks newsletter subscriber. My friends, we have a wonderful show for you today. We have a big name handicapper, Doug Upstone, back to discuss a little bit of Super Bowl 53, the lines, some of the line moves. We're going to discuss the prop market, and which is kind of coming out now. And we're going to discuss if there's any value in some of our thoughts on the NFL in general, a little bit of recap of the season. Then we're going to go into college basketball for the weekend, Friday and Saturday games. So we have a jam-packed show for you today. Before we get into all of that, I'd like to cover my Big Ten rankings, where I see it. Well, I'm going to start right away with number one. There is a new Big Ten leader in town, and that is Michigan State. Michigan State has been whipping on people, and I don't mean just whooping, I mean like double-digit ass whooping. They have been without Josh Langford for a few weeks now, and they just took care of Iowa, won by double digits. The game wasn't even close at the end. Partially, Iowa's choking, only scoring 12 points in about 15 minutes of that second quarter. But Michigan State was partially because of their defense as well. Cassius Winston, he's an absolute beast, and Nick Ward is a beast as well. This team is well on their way to, I think, a 1 seed, 2 at the worst. Michigan State is the best team. Second, I have Michigan. A little bit of a hiccup at Wisconsin, lost that game, and then kind of had to win that Minnesota game at home at the last second. They kind of I guess calmed their game a little bit. They're not shooting quite as well. Some teams go through lulls in the middle of the season, but looking at this team, it's going to take a lot for them to jump back ahead of Michigan State, in my opinion. I still like them at number 2. Number 3, a team I was wrong about. They were going to be my fade team, but I'm done with that narrative. They've beat me quite a few times this year, and that's Purdue. Matt Painter's doing a fantastic job there. Carson Edwards is an absolute unstoppable beast himself. He always hits the big shots, and that's kind of what you need, the clutch person like him. And they got a few other good guys. Evan Brodeur that transferred. Matt Harms, big guy down center. Grady Eifert. They're pretty loaded too. Number 4, I actually am very impressed by this team, and that is Maryland, coached by Mark Turgeon. Anthony Cowan, amazing job this year. Jalen Smith's been amazing. This team is playing just some great basketball right now. Been making a little bit of money off of Maryland. Bruno Fernando is an absolute beast. I'm loving this team, and I think they're fourth best in the Big Ten. Number 5, I have Wisconsin. They definitely jumped back up a little bit after beating Michigan, and then they took care of business in the letdown spot at Illinois. This team, they're one of those teams, if they're hitting, they can beat some people. I'm very surprised that Nate Ravers played so good. Hap was in foul trouble the whole game, and Ravers scored like 22, 24 points in that Illinois game. And so, he is a key part of that inside game if when they, obviously get farther into the season. He needs to be big down there. But, so a lot of his points are in threes, so he's a stretch 4 type of guy. You still have Khalil Iverson needs to step it up a little bit more in the paint. So I don't think Wisconsin faces up well against teams that are big in the paint. I think they would have to hit a ton of threes to beat those teams, and very high percentage shooting, but that's their weakness in my opinion. Nebraska, I have next. Tim Miles' team, they're close to Wisconsin. They're just not quite there. So Nebraska, I have after them. The next team I have is Iowa. Iowa was on a tear getting Tyler Cook back until they, ran into juggernaut Michigan State. But this team still is very dangerous when they're hitting their shots. And, if you look at this team, they have flashes of greatness. There's kind of a big step down after this bunch. And then the next group I have is Minnesota. And Minnesota, Jordan Murphy's their guy there. Now, I know they beat Wisconsin in Wisconsin, but this was one of the worst games I've ever seen Wisconsin play. Wisconsin's the better team still. But I do like what Minnesota showed at Michigan. And so they're a very dangerous team. Don't get me wrong. But going to Illinois and getting beat by like 25, 30 points, that didn't bode well for me about a week ago. Northwestern I have next. Chris Collins is doing a great job. As long as Victor Law is healthy, this is another dangerous team in the Big Ten. After Northwestern, I have Indiana. And what the hell is going on with Indiana? They haven't won a Big Ten game in January yet. Their bigs are not getting the ball. They're turning over the ball too much. Romeo Langford is showing how green he is as a true freshman. And they're just not playing in sync here. I think Miller's going to have to take care of that and figure that out in Indiana. I'm actually very concerned that Indiana is going to not make the tournament here from what's been going on. So, if they don't get their act together, losing 5 Big Ten games in a row does not bode well for getting into the tournament. And let's look at them. I'm not sure if they have too many great victories. I know Duke blew them out. Marquette was a great victory because Marquette's doing well. Oh, Louisville and Butler. Yeah, what the hell? That should almost be able to get them in if they can just, almost be 500 in the Big Ten. But geez, terrible start there, Next team is Ohio State. Ohio State, beat teams like Cincinnati, Creighton, and then UCLA. And then just completely fizzled as soon as January happened, and also lost 5 games in a row. So Ohio State, I have, after Indiana, which is 10th in the Big Ten. Actually, 11th in the Big Ten. That's not good. Penn State, I have after them. Penn State had some problems, but Mike Watkins was out for a little bit. They're just not shooting the ball either. You can expose them if you get Watkins in foul trouble. They're playing terrible. I think Pat Chambers is kind of having a hangover year. He had such a great year last year, winning the NIT and everything. But just can't live up to what they did last year. Then next I have Rutgers. Eugene Omoyuri was out for a while, but he came back, and then all of a sudden they beat Nebraska at home. and that was a very impressive win. So Rutgers is definitely a somewhat dangerous team, but as long as the team's playing decent, they should be able to take care of them. And then Illinois, Illinois is the last still, but as you see how they played Wisconsin, they showed some flashes of greatness. Trent Frazier is a baller there. They have that that big guy. I'm not gonna Georgie or whatever, and I don't want to destroy his last name, but starts with a B. He did pretty well, and I think that Illinois, they're so young. I mean, like literally super young for like freshman starters. This team can definitely have room to improve. Both Rutgers and Illinois is young. I'm worried that it's going to be Penn State and Ohio State possibly in the bottom of this barrel when it comes to the end, and maybe Rutgers and Illinois ends up jumping them. All right, well, that's my Big Ten rankings. We will update you those, once or twice, once every 2 weeks or once a week on our podcasts. Let's get right into our guest, Mr. Doug Upstone. Now I'd like to welcome back a very decorated handicapping expert with documented 21 number one titles in all the major sports, over 75 top 10 finishes as well. Doug is an amazing streak right now. 95-64 in college basketball, 31-20 in the NBA, and 13-7 in the NFL. You can find his work at Vegas Pro Insiders Daily and on YouTube. I'd like to welcome back Doug Upstone. How you doing, Doug?
I am doing excellent. How are you today?
Fantastic. It's a beautiful day for college basketball. We have a lot to talk about. How about that Super Bowl? The biggest bet game in America, possibly the world. There's some
soccer stuff.
Some huge soccer stuff, right? And European betting, but the Super Bowl is definitely one of them. And I'm so excited to talk to you about that, man, and get your thoughts. How you been in general?
I've been very good. It's the first part of the busiest sector is done, so that's good. And but it was very successful. Won in college football, not huge, but won, and also won in the NFL, and a nice, closing the season nice. So that's good. So that's been awesome. And I know that speaking of college football, I know you were big on Clemson and nailed that one. So that was great work by you. And hey. We just go on and on here, but now start gearing up for not only the Super Bowl, but March Madness now is literally going to be right around the corner, in another, 10 days. So here we go.
Absolutely, man. And I love Vegas Pro Insiders. Great articles for everybody. People can become members and even get more of that great sports betting information. I love it, Doug. You always have some great stuff. And speaking of the NFL, let's kind of get right into what we have going on here. Obviously, with the thing that everybody's talking about, right? Rule changes, the whole Saints debacle of a call at the end of that. Do you have any thoughts on what transpired, or do you have any thoughts on how to fix this?
Well, I don't think there's no one way to fix this. Obviously they could take the model of what the CFL does for pass interference and then try and incorporate it that way. I guess one of the questions I have, though, in even trying to do that is, how do you go about it? And then do you really want to start taking games from roughly 3 hours and 10 minutes to 3 hours and then whatever many minutes? Mm-hmm. So it's just going to be that much longer. Now, granted, most people don't complain about the length of a college football game, but in the NFL, they have their windows and they hate to overlap their windows, in terms of when the games start. So I think that's part of it. I guess I look at it, what the NFL is a giant corporation. They're reactive, not proactive. So I think that's part of the problem. So what I would like to see is that if you want to do pass interference, that's fine. Let the teams or coaches go from 2 replay challenges, take it to 3. So let them decide. And then the other aspect that I'd like to see is instead of giving these guys, all the time in the world basically to look at a replay, have it be 90 seconds. And so once they start, there's basically a button that's pushed. They start. And if they can't decide within 90 seconds, you go with the call, period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely get that. Are you saying challenge no calls? Because